Welcome back to Spill the BBT After Dark. My name is Adam, and that is
Andrew James Lee.
yay! Welcome back to our After Dark episode that we talk about all your feedback from our main episode. So if you haven't heard of our main episode, make sure you go on to the podcast and listen and come back. If you have any more questions, comment down below in the comment section. All right? And without further ado,
Woo.
let's get your bubble tea up and
Cheers.
cheers!
All right, what did we talk about last episode? Competition 101.
Mm-hmm.
Comp tips for
Mm-hmm.
beginners. One of my students actually sent me a bunch of cool questions we didn't touch on at all. She wanted to know about costuming. How much money should you plan to spend on a costume? Should you custom make your costume? Where do you buy your materials? Who do you go to for costumes? This is a funny question to ask us because we both make our own costumes.
Exactly. I'm like trying to save as much money as I can. And I mean, I have custom made costumes a few times, ended up being quite expensive. And then so later on, it was like, I have the sewing skill. I might as well just learn how to sew costume properly. So yeah, I just make my own now.
So you have fashion education though, right? Like you actually studied
Mm-hmm.
fashion, and I also have some costume making education. But it's funny that even though we both had these sewing skills, we both in the beginning had other people make our costumes. My sister-in-law makes like calisthenics and gymnastics costumes, and so she already was really familiar with working with spandex. And
Mm-hmm.
so she used to make my costumes in the beginning, and she got to a certain point where she's like, "You are too picky. Here's a sewing machine. I've taught you everything you need to know. Get out of my shed." um,
Oh,
and she was instrumental though, because I knew how to sew, but I didn't know how to sew spandex, and I was always afraid of stretch
oh,
fabrics.
yeah.
Had you sewn much spandex? Because I feel like whole costumes are almost exclusively stretch fabric.
Yeah, I have. So in the second year of my fashion school, we have to learn how to do swimwear. So we have to have a whole collection by the end of the semester. We also have a fashion parade. So yeah, I'll have to solve that. But that was like normal people swimwear, there's
Normal
not
people.
much detail to it. It's very simple. But for Paul, because we have grips and we have a lot of functionality that we have to meet. So it's very different, you know, and so
Yeah,
I have to
true.
learn.
True, true. Because like a lot of swimwear, like unless you are doing synchronized swimming or you're doing butterfly, um, a lot of swimwear is meant for lounging around on the beach and not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily for like really aggressive movement. So
Mm-hmm.
I found that with my sister Sue, she would always use bikini patterns as the base, and then she would
Yeah.
alter them. And so over the years, she and I worked together and we sort of Frankenstein together the perfect pattern, because one difference between pole dancers and I guess most of the regular population is we have different proportions as well as different needs because of grip and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you have to be, I guess, really familiar. And I think a lot of women are familiar because we shop for lingerie, we shop for bras and stuff like that. We're really familiar with like your proportions. Like I know I have
Mm-hmm.
unusually long arms, unusually wide shoulders, unusually broad waist, but really narrow gusset. So I've had to Frankenstein a lot of patterns. And I was always scared that if you hire somebody to make a custom costume for you, you won't have enough time to go back and forth doing fittings and stuff like that. Because I've heard from people who hired costumers who didn't live in the same city, and so it would be
Oh yeah.
like they would mail the costume back and forth to do fittings like remotely. That stresses me out so much.
That's too much. I actually done that before, but I did it with Georgia Moon. If you don't know
Yeah.
her, iconic. Most of the Sydney pole dancer have their costume done by Georgia Moon. So I had it done by her, and because she's so well experienced in making pole costume, especially she does mine, which is men's one, which is completely
Yeah.
different. The one I had was literally overall. So it's nothing like women's cut at all. But she still did it in one go. So I didn't have to do any
Amazing.
fitting because she's in Sydney. I was living in Brisbane, so she just sent it to me and it was perfect. So
Oh,
again, experience. That did cost me a little bit, but not too much. So that's one of my a custom made costume experience. So yeah.
See, I wonder if there is a real significant price difference between men's costumes and women's costumes, because just in regular fashion, women's fashion is always so much more expensive than men's fashion. And I feel like the gender gap is closing because
Yeah.
men's fashion and men's costume are becoming a lot more interesting. Like it's not just a tuxedo all the time.
Yeah.
But and also costumes in general are becoming more elaborate because people are doing costume changes during the show and people are starting to learn about costume removal and all of the
Mm-hmm.
different layers. So those are the things that are all going to impact the cost of your costume. Like for me, I've only ever made costumes for one other person aside from myself, and
Mm-hmm.
that's Charlie Love, because we used to
Yeah.
dance together, but then he also hired me to make a costume for him, and it was like three costumes in one because he had a
Mm-hmm.
thong, he had briefs, and then he had like a unitard over top. Not a unitard,
Mm-hmm.
a monokini. Wait, is it a unitard or a monokini?
I just call leotard everything. A
A
bodysuit.
leotard. Yeah, a bodysuit. It was a bodysuit. So it was like three costumes in one. And I think a lot of performances are starting to have that many layers.
Yeah.
So budgeting for that. I think how much should you budget for a show costume? Depending on how elaborate, it could be anywhere from a couple hundred to many hundreds of dollars,
From now, you can literally go from under $50 to 500 or even $1,000. A lot of
depending how
people
many
just go
crystals.
different. Yeah, a lot of people know how to crystallize their own costume, so that's good. But if they don't, if they get someone like who's that girl? Oh, who's that girl from 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 Ireland?
From Ireland.
Uh, from Ireland. I have to put it here. From what the Instagram name is like five something, five or
Wait, is
something.
she a
No,
costumer or
she's a
a deck?
costumer. She's a costumer.
Yep.
Her costume are so pretty, and it's all very like well made and stuff like that. It's always like well decorated. It's even though she has a lot of like simple basic cuts, but like all the details are different, completely different from one to one. And I think her costume will cost you like $300 to $500, but they are like quality work, so you can frame
I
them after you wear them.
Yeah, well, this is what I really struggle with because I have so many costumes that I've collected over the years, and I would love to frame them and hang them on the wall because I well, I I don't know what I'm trying to say. I
I
love
don't
my
know either.
costumes and I love my costumes and I wish I could put them on display because I feel like I put as much work into making my costumes as I do into crafting my entire show.
Yeah.
Same thing with the soundtracks of my shows. I put a lot of effort into editing my music, and I'm pretty proud of some of those edits that I've done because a lot of the times, majority of the times, I don't just dance to one song. I'll take a few songs and I'll edit them together, or I'll take a few different versions of the same song and edit them together. And it's like
Hmm.
each element so I know other people hire people to do sound design and costume design and make their props and stuff like that. But I think I've always taken a lot of pride in doing each of those elements myself. And I wish I
Yeah,
could
same.
frame all of them. Yeah, you do it
Yeah.
too. You're one of these jack of all trades.
Because that's the thing, like when I was doing street dance, you have to be resourceful. You do everything yourself. All the teachers that we had that, every time we had to do a showcase, the specific teacher or instructor, they do all the music cutting, they source our students' costume and everything. So that's kind of like I just automatically think, oh yeah, like if you're gonna be a performer, I have to do everything. And yeah, so yeah, when you do competitions, like you can literally spend this much or this much, depends on what you can do. You can outsource
Yeah.
everything or you can do everything yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like asking how long is a piece of string
Mm.
because there have definitely been times when, I'd just go to like a lingerie shop and I'd just buy a bra and underwear on sale and then just go buy
Mm-hmm.
some crystals and decorate it. And,
Yeah.
majority of people won't know the difference when you're on stage. Like Amy Hazel used to always say, it's far from good, but it's good from afar. And hopefully that
Mm-hmm.
can give give everyone a little bit of confidence to do some of their own crafting, if that's something
Mm-hmm.
that you enjoy. Like, if money's no object, then of course pay somebody to do it for you. But if that's something that you
Mm-hmm.
enjoy, and I do find crystalling and crafting to be quite therapeutic, and especially when you're so stressed out in the lead up to a show, that kind of
No, it
therapeutic,
doesn't.
repetitive thing. What, you don't
It
get stressed
doesn't.
in the lead up to a show? Oh,
I
you
get
don't find it
anxious,
therapeutic.
and then the fume it's getting me high, so I'm getting
The glue
headache
fumes.
high. Yeah, so I'm getting headache high and also anxious. So
Wait, what
mhm.
kind of glue are you using that it's getting you high?
Like E6000 or something like that.
Okay, this is the best glue for crystals, E6000. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
E6000 in the silver tube?
Hmm.
Also, okay, recommendations for where to buy crystals. When I was in Melbourne, there's a place called Opening Night Supplies, and they have
Hmm.
really, really cheap crystals. So if you just want to get the job done, go there. But if you're really particular about getting Swarovskis, because they do have that extra blingy blingy, I found a really cool store in Brisbane that has like walls and walls. It's like the bulk barn for
Hmm.
Swarovski crystals, all different sizes, all different colors. But it's attached to a doll hospital, which is really creepy. But they
Yep.
have a decent price on crystals. So whatever your
Yeah.
costume is, just cover it in crystals and everyone's gonna think you're worth $1 million.
Yes, yes. There, if you're in Australia, there's also one online one. It's called Crystal something something. But you just put in AB Crystal Sydney and it will comes up. That's the first one. I usually just get it from there, and they're pretty good quality and cheap as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, get back to the competition. Any more feedback that we need to discuss?
You know what's funny about me and competitions, specifically me, let's talk about me.
Mhm. Okay.
I as you know, I'm not interested in the competition side of things because I just love to perform. But every time
Mm-hmm.
I get to this point in my pole career where I think, maybe I'm gonna stop competing, and maybe I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna go a different route. Maybe I'm gonna go back into acting, or maybe I'm just gonna go back to school and become an accountant like everyone always tells me I should do. But there's always something that draws me back. And maybe it's because it's the start of the year, but I've been thinking, like, am I going to compete this year? And like, Joanna
Mm-hmm.
Littlewood Johnson has this new show this year in Perth called Pole Unity, and she has a
Mm-hmm.
showcase section of the show. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking of applying for that. And
Mm-hmm.
then, I just saw floor plays happening on the Gold Coast. And then, there's just so many opportunities to compete. And I'm like, oh, maybe I think I do feel drawn to continuing to perform. I
Yeah,
just
I mean
like
that's good. Do
addicted.
it, do it. Because if you want to
What are you
perform,
gonna do this
perform.
year?
I have no idea. God, can you believe it's 2024? Like, what the fuck? I think I just want to stay alive this year.
The first week is already over. I mean, I know we're not gonna
Yeah.
release this episode for another week, but by the time you watch this, 2 weeks of 2024 will be done.
Yeah. What are you doing? Are you
What
competing this year? Start
I
planning.
well, as you know, actually, as you may know, but I haven't like publicly told anybody, I started writing a one woman show, a solo
Mm-hmm.
show, a one person
Mm-hmm.
show. I don't know where I'm gonna perform it or when I'm gonna perform it, but I just started writing over the
Mm-hmm.
holidays, and I started
Well,
like,
if our podcast flops, then you can perform on the podcast, I guess, on a YouTube, guys. You want to see that?
oh, well, speaking of performing on YouTube, my nephew, he's just learned about the stock market and monetizing social media, and he started getting on my case about monetizing my YouTube. Because
Mm,
you need a minimum 500 subscribers, and I have almost 600. And he's like, "Why haven't you done this yet?" So this year
yeah.
might actually be my year of lifting my YouTube game.
You should. I thought it's 1,000 people.
So that's for a different category of monetizing. So there's two
Ah, okay.
different types of monetizing. One, you need 500. The bigger monetizing, you need 1,000. But I need 3,000 watch hours over the next year, and I currently have
Yeah.
74.
Okay. All right. Start doing some OnlyFans, I guess.
You can do OnlyFans on YouTube. I need to lift my YouTube.
I don't think so.
I mean, I know this is a really big, daunting question, but do you think you'll compete again? Because the thing is, you have won so many things. You know, you won Pole Icon, you won Mr. Pole multiple times. What do you feel like there's anything left for you to do in competitions?
Not really.
So do you think you're done with competitions?
I
I
mean,
mean, I think that's fair to say.
I don't think I'm done with the competition. It's just like there's no competition makes me want to compete. You know, I think I have because I've always wanted to like do production shows and stuff like that. So
Yes.
I really want to do more of that. But it's really hard because a lot of the existing production, it's like you need to be away for quite some time. You know, it's not just like a one-off things. So maybe I should start with like one-off show and then start to progress to like because I'm studying, so it's kind of hard to commit to a bigger productions. But I do
Yeah.
want to do more production shows instead of competitions because my
Okay.
body.
Well, if you ever wanted to collaborate on something, producing shows is something that I do know how to do, and the only
Mm,
reason I'm creating a solo show right now is because I found it very difficult to connect with people over a long enough period of time that would require you know what I'm saying?
mm-hmm,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
mm-hmm.
And so that's why I started creating a solo show, and you know, I've gotten like a little bit nuts with it because I've started lining up meetings and having meetings with other writers and other solo performers who I really respect just to get some feedback because I've always been an ensemble performer and I've
Yeah.
always been like a collaborative type personality. So doing something totally
Mm-hmm,
solo is terrifying.
mm-hmm,
So it might help my spirit and my soul to do something
mm-hmm.
collaborative simultaneously so that I don't
Yeah.
slip into this deep hole of questioning my value as a human being in this planet.
Yeah. No, you're fine. You're fine. You're good.
Ah!
So you know you're good. We know you're good. So yeah, do it. I think it's cool. It's so cool. It's
But
very
also your
different. It's like,
idea, produce something.
mm. I
What
mean,
kind of show do you want to
I
produce?
always produce stuff in my head. Okay, like because my background in street dance, I always love watching like more of a pop singer show, that kind of concert type of show. So, but instead of the singer, we replace that with pole dancers.
Yes.
So that's something I kind of want to do more. And I think the only competition that I can do that is pole icon because I can do whatever I want. So I can treat it like a production show, like a
Yep.
concert for me, like my concert, and then do it that way. Otherwise, there's no other competition that I can do that. I think.
Yeah. See, you know, one of the most satisfying performings I ever did, and we only touched on the potential of how satisfying this could be, but it was when Amy Hazel and I did Felix Kane's pole championships. And
Mm-hmm.
she and I were competing against each other, but we decided to guest appear in each other's shows as White Swan and Black Swan. And we
Mm-hmm.
specifically requested, can Amy go before intermission and I go after intermission to give this
Mm-hmm.
feel of something cohesive while still shocking the
Mm-hmm.
audience? Because I think it's like fairly unheard of for competitors to collaborate with each other, not
Yep.
in an attempt to win, but to create something theatrical. And that was
Mm-hmm.
so exciting because she did her White Swan in the first half and I did my Black Swan. And from the very moment the lights came up, there were literally people in the audience. You could hear them come to attention and kind of gasping and
Mm-hmm.
whispering because the feeling was like, hey, we just saw this one. Like, is something going on? And it snapped
Yeah.
people to attention. And
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, it made people see something different because it's theater now, it's not a competition. And that's
Yeah.
always what I want to be doing.
Mm-mm-mm.
Um,
I think that's good.
so
That
yeah,
was quite iconic.
I think this is the next step for us because I will keep doing competitions as a default just because I want
Yeah,
to perform. But
yeah.
if producing a show is something that you're actually interested in, we should get something off the ground because I think we could
Mm,
make something really exciting.
yeah, let's do it. Why
Why
not?
not?
Because exactly this year, all we need to do is just start. So if you want to compete or do something, just start and go and do it. Okay? There's no, just stop thinking. I'm not necessarily a person that plan a lot, even for my competitions. I plan in my head, and I'll give myself a few weeks, and I'll just like putting things there, and then try to see if it will work. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. That's okay. At least I
Yeah.
started. you know?
I've been calling it my New Year's resolution, but I actually started in early December, but it's don't wait, start now. And so even though
Mm,
it was a New Year's resolution, I thought of it in December. So I started it immediately in December because that was the whole spirit of it. Because I always have these ideas and then they simmer and simmer and then they kind of dissipate because the moment passes. And so my goal for this year is just when I have an idea, do it right away. Or when something
yeah,
lands on my plate, even if it's just an email or a bill, it's just like pay it right away, get it off your plate. And because when it
yeah,
comes to creativity, if you wait, the moment passes and then it's no longer relevant or it doesn't
yeah,
feel urgent for you anymore.
yeah, exactly.
I,
And
I
also,
want
when
to
you
do,
have an
yeah,
idea, the universe, when you have the idea becomes something, and then it got thrown into the universe, and someone with the same frequency is gonna pick that up and then think that, oh my God, they're gonna do it, and then they do it. So that literally
yeah,
happened to me so many times when I have one idea, because obviously, like all the things has been done. So it's not like something that never someone never have seen it, but it's just so weird. In that probably like 3 months, when I have the idea, if I don't do it right away, in the next 3 months, I will keep seeing people doing this thing that I was going to do. It's actually quite crazy. So now I'm just like, when I have an idea, I don't think about detail. I just like, okay, it's there. I put it down and I don't think about it because I don't want people to steal it. Not steal it, but
I really admire this about you that you don't worry about the details. You just get shit done right now. And I want to do more of that because what you're talking about is collective conscious,
yeah,
where the
collective
concept,
consciousness.
yeah, the concept is when an idea comes into existence, it becomes available to anyone who's on that frequency. And
Yeah.
so it really makes you realize when you have an idea, you cannot sit on it. There is no perfect
Mm-hmm.
moment. You're never going to be ready. You've just got to dive in head first, face first, ass first, whatever. Just get in there and just muck about
Mm.
because doing something mediocre is better.
Mediocre.
I mean, not
It's
that I'm
okay.
advocating for being mediocre, but doing something mediocre is better than never doing it at all, or better
Yes,
than watching
exactly.
somebody else do what you wish you could have done. Just don't
Yeah,
be
and
afraid to
they
be mediocre.
exactly. It's very common. Like Taylor Swift, she's so popular because she's mediocre, and we have a lot of mediocre people on the planet, and they need someone mediocre to look up to. That's why she's so popular. Is
Well,
that
and
shade?
the thing is, no, 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 I don't think it's shade, right? Like, obviously, there are so many Swifties right now, but
I
she
like her
was not a.
music. Just
Oh,
saying.
I like her music, and a friend of mine gave me a pure education on Taylor Swift because I was like, she was a guilty pleasure for me, and I was a bit embarrassed to like her music and want to dance to some of her songs. And he was like, "Sit down. You need to let that go because we're gonna watch a bunch of her music videos now." And by the end of it, you're going to have respect for her. And it's true. It's true. But I think
Yeah.
for Taylor Swift, one of the reasons she's as huge as she is, she wasn't afraid of failing when she was a
Mm-hmm.
preteen. She just got out there
Mm-hmm.
and started singing her music no matter what people thought of her. And I think if we all had more of that spirit of like,
Mm-hmm.
don't be afraid of everyone telling you you suck. And
Yeah.
so my brother-in-law is obsessed with Taylor Swift and my niece is obsessed with Taylor Swift. So we started watching her Eras tour. It's like her concert is
Yeah.
available on Disney Plus. We got about
Yeah.
3 songs in and my brother-in-law started raving about how multi-talented she is with
Mm-hmm.
like her singing and her songwriting and her dancing. And when we got to her dancing, I was like, ugh. And I kind
Oh
of
no.
winced a little bit. And he was like,
Yeah.
you don't think she's a good dancer? And I was like, well, she's doing all the moves. And he
But she's
was
not
like,
dancing.
oh, yeah, she's not dancing. She's just doing all the moves. And he said, oh, you don't see her through rose colored glasses. And I said, no, I see her very clearly. Whereas he's like, no, no, I see her through rose colored glasses. I love her. Like
What does
everyone
that
wants to.
even mean?
It means that he can't see her flaws because he's so in love with her.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Got it, got it, got it.
But the thing is, I can see her flaws and still respect what she's doing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't care. Like, that's the thing though, because when you think of someone not dancing really well, but we judge them right away, it's just because like this subconsciously, maybe that's how we don't do it, or we get insecure about. That's why when we see that, we'll call it out. So when I
Mhm.
see someone that's good, actually, I was just thinking about that yesterday. So weird we're talking about it right now. Just like I don't like to judge people unless you pay me to, in a competition setting, obviously. Um, yeah. When that happens, I when I have the thought of someone doing something and I judge them, not necessarily bad, but it can be good. I will reflect to myself, am I judging that because I feel like I'm lack of that? I will like instantly reflect about myself because that's something that I never do. I just judge. But recently I realized I do that. Actually, like when we judge people, it's because we're insecure. Yeah, that's the truth.
I was just talking about this exact thing as well because I used to always hear people say, "Oh, how people treat you is actually a reflection on them, not on you," or like,
Yeah.
don't get offended. And I used to always think like, how could that possibly be true? But now that I
Mm,
have a better understanding of like trauma and mental health, I'm like, oh, the reason it's true is because the majority of people assume that everyone is like themselves. And so if
mm,
they have an insecurity,
mm-hmm,
confirmation bias, they'll see that insecurity everywhere and they'll start to pick on it. And so with
mm-hmm,
me commenting on Taylor Swift's dancing, it's because I know I'm not the best dancer. I have to work
mm,
really, really hard just to remember the movement and listen to the music. And so all the things that I nitpick about my own dancing, I can see her because
mm-hmm,
I'm like, oh, she's
mm-hmm,
doing all the moves, but she doesn't have that same aliveness that
mm-hmm.
like, Britney Spears might have. But you can also realize that you don't have to be the best dancer. You can make up for it in other ways.
Yeah.
So like for me, I may not be the best dancer, but I have a lot of energy and a lot of heart, and I have a lot
Mm-hmm.
of like I have a lot of fun
Dedication.
and
Yeah.
dedication and stuff like that. So I have a lot of all of these other things that some people who are amazing dancers don't have
Mm-hmm.
the same energy, don't have the
Yeah.
same infectious fun attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just really there's going to be different things for different audiences.
So that's why there are so many different types of competitions now that, you don't necessarily have to be good at one specific thing. You can pick one thing that you're good at. If you're good at pole tricks, go to a pole fitness competition, more pole spotlight. If you're good at dancing, go to a more dancing one. If you are more like a combination, like a total package, you go for Miss Pole.
Or if you're good at rebellion and stirring shit up,
Then
go to a
just
sport comp and
do
dance sexy.
yeah, and do heels. It was so
Or
iconic. Do you remember IPC 2018 in
no,
Australia? That was in Brisbane. It was so iconic because IPC is it was one of the most like prestigious international competitions. Like literally all the competitors are from different countries. They were picked from like 100 people down to like 8 people. But Miss Philly represented Australia. I was representing the men. She's representing the women. She did heels. She brought the true
nice.
Aussie showgirl style to that stage. But obviously, because she's so strong, she's very sporty as well. So she
Yeah,
did everything in heels, and that was just
yeah,
iconic because no one actually expected that in a IPC competition.
yeah. I think people have to try to break barriers. You know,
Yeah.
I remember the first time I did Miss Pole Victoria, and I was like, well, I'm gonna dive roll on stage in a fleece onesie. This was my Pikachu show. Um,
Yeah,
because
yes.
because I really was like, I'm not sexy in the same way that everybody else was. And
Mm,
so I thought I'm just gonna do what I am and do like what
mm-hmm.
I really, really am. And what I really, really am is like a stuffed animal. I'm like a fuzzy snuggle
Oh,
toy.
I love
Um,
it.
but I remember afterwards, some people came up to me and they were like, I never knew you could do that in this competition. And I think this
Mm,
idea that people feel like they need permission or they need to follow the rules, it's not
mm-hmm.
as true as you think. You can literally do whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, it depends because some people want to win. Obviously, if you
Yeah,
want to win, you're gonna follow the rules. There's a formula. And if you don't, you just want
yeah.
to perform and make people remember you long term, then yeah, you do Andrea.
Okay. We need to wrap this up for After Dark.
Yeah, because I
Thank you so
finished my
much,
bubble
everyone.
tea.
Oh my god, I have enough for us to film in another entire episode. So
Well, which
pace
we will.
yourself, friends. Pace yourself. Thank you so much for joining us on YouTube at Spill the Bubble Tea After Dark. We're Andrea and Adam talking to you twice a month on the 1st and on the 15th. What else do you need to know? Follow us on Instagram at Spill the BBT Podcast and send us your comments below.
Yes.
Cheers.
See you later. Slurp, slurp.